Well, welcome everyone to episode 2 of Filler Up. He brought to you by the Migtown podcast. So, of course, we have our host, Phil. I got to point in the other direction because cameras are weird. And joining us today, guest into our studio, is the GrimLord, fellow doll owner. Grim, go ahead and introduce yourself. What are you all about?
Okay, so I'm the GrimLord. I'm known as the resident degenerate of the Migtown sphere, I guess you could say. And I'm a doll owner, but I'm also like a hentai content creator. But we also do regular Western adult games too. I'm kind of getting really into those for some reason. I guess it's the realism factor. Anyway, I also talk about political things and other. So it's just a lot of different. But yeah, let me go ahead, just skip the small stuff and go right on to it. You guys had Koopa on, and Koopa, he's basically in the honeymoon phase of the doll, I guess you could say, cycle. And I'm well past the honeymoon phase. Of course, I had a different honeymoon phase than he did. Because as some of you may well know, I don't really have sex with my doll. They use the term doll fucker and all that. I'm not into that aspect of it. I tried it, but it wasn't necessarily for me. However, what I found that I enjoyed was the companionship, just having something there. Because I went through a lot of shit when I grew up, and there's been a lot of trauma and things like that. And I felt the doll was very therapeutic in helping me deal with that kind of thing. However, recently, I just had a bunch of unexpected health problems come up. Anxiety through the roof, just all kinds of issues. They have to operate on they have to operate on my lower region. I've had 2 endoscopies. I've been to the ER 3 times. It's been pretty crazy. So I haven't had a lot of time to really mess with my doll. And here recently, I was trying to basically apply her eyelashes. And, Dr. Dollhouse, he has that thing where you use the magnetic eyeliner. And I tried that, and I have like a really kind of shaky hand. Not necessarily Parkinson's, but I have like a little bit of a tremor, and it makes it difficult to apply those really small amounts on the eyelashes. So basically what happened is I tried this with super glue first. Do not do that, by the way. And super glue may come off the TPE pretty easy. Like, you can use mineral spirits to get rid of it. It doesn't come off the eyes that quickly. And the thing about the head I was using is this head is about 4 years old. It was a head that they actually, get this, Phil, they glued the eyes into the head so you couldn't remove them. It was actually a very, very bad job. It's not Don's fault. It was JY, I guess, early on before they started getting more well-known with their dolls. And they decided to glue in the tongue, and there was just all kinds of pieces and stuff inside the mouth.
So the eyes themselves did not move. They just stuck straight ahead.
They're just stuck in there. And so was the tongue, just completely. I've never seen anything like it. I asked for a new head, but I asked for a new head a little bit too close to Chinese New Year. And what I got was an angry employee that decided that they would take it out on the doll's face. So they gave me how a woman crosses her eyes when she's angry? That's the doll head I got. I got my doll, but they had crossed the eyelashes so that she looked extremely angry. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I'm going to have to stick with the original head. And basically, I've used the original head for the longest time. And there's so many different things I've tried, with or Dr. Dollhouse, rather, was learning all his stuff. I was like, okay, let me try this. Let me try that. And then he realized that the fair-skinned dolls you can only do certain things with. You can't do the same on like a darker skin doll that you could do with a fair skin. And I'm like, oh crap, I've messed this head up. So now I'm smearing it with toothpaste, trying to get the blemishes out of it that I've ruined, because she had Joker face going on, which is what happens when
were you using the Sharpies?
Yes, yes, very bad on fair skinned dolls. You can't do that. And well, now of course I've got this issue where I've got the other head, but it is just completely, I can't use it at all. I mean, it's terrible. I couldn't use it for pictures, even with the eyelashes. I guess I bought them too thick. It just looks terrible. I'm looking at it like, this isn't my doll. So I'm like, I need a new head, and like this will be my third head this time, because it just, I don't know. The first one I liked the head, but then they made it where I couldn't even put eyes in it, because of course Revy Innovations, he wanted me to test out the Follow Me eyes. I said, well, I'll use the head that I have and I'll put those in there. Then I tried to take the eyes out, like, oh shit, they glued them in. So I can't even do this now. I had to use that other head. And of course it looked funny, because that was an old head that I basically had in a bag somewhere. And it's just a mess. But at any rate, I will say that aside from all that hassle that I've been going through, when I first got my doll, it was definitely a honeymoon phase. Like, it freaked me out because I went to the bathroom after I had just unboxed her and basically dressed her up. And when I came back from the bathroom, I nearly jumped up to the ceiling because I saw a person there, and my brain still hadn't gotten around the fact that it was a doll. So I thought that there was a woman sitting in my room at first, and I just about jumped out of my skin. I'm like, oh, that's the doll. So I finally calmed down, after a while, and I got really used to it. You get the butterflies in your stomach. You get like, oh, she's my waifu, and blah, blah, blah. And I started, I took it a little far in the beginning, but not too much farther than I guess TFM would do. But anyway, as time went on, I started to realize, yeah, she's just a doll. She's nice to have. I like sleeping next to her every night, or I did. And, I just kind of, I don't know. I guess I started to enjoy my own company a little more, I started to realize that there's a lot of things I enjoy, like doing by myself, and I don't necessarily need somebody, but she's nice to have around. So I got all into the hobby part of it. I got into the part where you like to dress her up, and I would go to Wish and buy these special outfits, try to make the girl that, I wanted, like the more gothic kind of thing. And that's pretty much what I've got going on. If you go to her Instagram, Zexy's Alien Hands is the Instagram there. But if you go to Zexy's Alien Hands, you'll see all kinds of different evolutions where I've changed her from basically an anime fan into this straight up Harakaju, which is basically mixing anime with goth. And that's pretty much what she is right now. And I like that look. I think it's good. I even found some special fingernails that I put on her that were specifically made for Halloween. So they've got little spider webs on them, and they have little like glitter, or it's hard to describe, but basically they're specifically made for one-time use, but for a doll they last forever. So I have been using these, and I've done a lot of work trying to get her to her current look, especially the red hair and all that kind of stuff. I've been through so many different wigs. I remember I used to buy a wig for her probably once a month, because they're only about $20 on Amazon. And before Biden's gas prices, that was not a problem. Now it's like, ooh, I might need that $20 a little more. But yeah, it's been a long journey. And I will say, yes, dolls do start kind of wearing out a little bit. Things that you don't know and you won't see on Instagram is there's a big tear in her armpit, like huge. and it's just from overuse. And I'm not even talking about sexual use. I haven't used the doll for sex, so she hasn't been in any compromising positions. It's just, moving her arms around for different things will eventually cause that TPE to break a little bit. So I have that going on. Some of her fingernails, or her fingers rather, they kind of bend a bit. So I basically put gloves on her because there might be a finger or two that's broken. And I don't quite want to do the TFM route and use a soldering iron. And plus, she looks good with the gloves anyway. So I just put these black gloves on. And I was like, oh, that's part of her goth aesthetic. I'll make it work. And so far, it works okay. I mean, it's no issue. I haven't had any legs break. I haven't had the head hasn't broken off the bolt yet. I mean, so it's been good for 4 or 5 years. You will see little marks on the TPE though, where it's starting to come apart, and it doesn't matter how much baby oil I use or Vaseline, which I always use Vaseline, before I go ahead and apply her clothes back on, because I use the baby oil, the Vaseline, and then the powder. And after I've done all that, then I, put everything on and use the little photo apps to make her look nice. I use Face App a lot, and there she goes to Instagram. But that's how I do it. And I mean, Koopa said that his doll wasn't mainly for dress. I don't know if he'll get into the dress up phase, but for me, mine was, all about making her look nice and all that kind of thing. It's good. I mean, the people use dolls for different things. Like obviously, Jay Doll King, he's really close to his dolls. I got a lot of respect for that. Some people might look at that guy and think you're crazy, but then when you listen to his words and his videos that he makes, especially that one about imagination, that really struck me, because this guy is basically talking about when we have a doll, we can go back to the imagination that we had when we were kids. They tell us adults, oh, you can't have like an imaginary friend or imaginary whatever. And we lose a lot of that when we become adults. So when you have this doll, you can imagine her as whatever you want. And you can kind of go back into that childlike sense of imagination and just thinking of her as, I mean, I don't want to say personifying her, but yeah, she's just like more than just a doll itself. And it's fun to do. I mean, do people take it too far? There might be some. But I mean, I'm not one of the guys that will push my doll around in like a wheelchair. Even TFM said that was a little cringe when he was talking to Playing with Fire a couple of weeks ago. He said, "Yeah, that's a little. I couldn't see myself doing that with Celestine. I couldn't see myself doing that with Zexy. I couldn't. That's just weird. I don't think I'd want to be that guy. I think that guy has a lot of balls, though. Anybody that's willing to push their doll in a shopping cart or a wheelchair in like a busy supermarket or a Walmart or something like that, you've got some balls, because people are just going to look at you like you're crazy. And I don't have anything against that kind of guy. It's just not something that I would personally do. I barely ever move my doll from this area. She basically sleeps on the bed. That's where she's been. She has her own pillow. She has her own space over there, basically. And I usually have put a little sleep mask on her, especially now because the eyes are so messed up that I just would rather not look at it. So I just put the sleep mask on it, and she looks like she's sleeping comfortably. And that works for me.
I know a guy in the UK who did that sort of wheelchair thing. And it wasn't so much a thing that he was just incredibly comfortable with it. What his reasoning behind it was simply he wanted to normalize dolls and not necessarily make it a sexual thing. But I was just kind of a little worried because I was watching the video of him, and he's positioning the doll, and it's on a beach in southern France, And he's taking photographs of the doll. It's not sexual. Doll's in a bikini like everyone else who's there.
Right.
And it was all very well, but I was just kind of concerned with it. You might have the right idea at heart to try and normalise dolls, but I don't think it's the right place to do it where there's going to be children. Because if I had children, I would be keeping them to one side and stay away from the crazy Englishman over there.
Absolutely. See, that's one thing I think we both agree on. Because I had some friends, they've got 2 kids, and they said, why don't you bring your doll over? And I said, well, you've got children. I mean, I wasn't going to bring my doll over there anyway. But, I mean, again, she doesn't really leave this area. That's one thing. But anyway, I was like, you've got kids, and I don't think that kids need to see this kind of doll. It's not for them. I think that there's a lot of... I
suppose technically just the shape of it doesn't necessarily have to suggest itself as a sex toy, but you just wouldn't bring sex toys in front of kids anyway of any variety, would you?
Right. I think that's a good point. But there's so much sexuality that the children are finding these days anyway. I mean, it's probably good that we keep things away from them. I mean, again, I'm going to go back to when I was a kid. I remember my childhood pretty vividly. Despite a lot of the bad things, you remember a lot of the good things. And I remember a time where I didn't know anything about this world, the adult world and stuff like that. And I had a great childhood. I lived in an era where if my uncle was home, he was going to be watching fishing shows all day. So you better go outside and play or you're going to be bored. So that's what I did. I
do know what you mean. I fully agree with that. But the friends who say, "Are you going to bring your doll over?"
Right.
I'd be curious. What is it that you're expecting? Are you expecting me to be sat there like at this dinner party, actually having a conversation with a doll that doesn't talk back? I've always thought that was a bit worrying. If somebody crosses that line and they start actually having active, animated conversations with the doll. So I think that, for me anyway, I think that's perhaps you're going into dangerous territory.
Now, see, I did make a profile for a long time ago and all that kind of stuff where I was interacting and all. But again, as I got older, or I guess I went through more life experiences, I realized that, this is kind of lame. But I still like acting as her on the Instagram. I think that's fun. That's still kind of fun to do. And TFM does that with Celestina sometimes. I don't think there's any issue with that. And I mean, occasionally you do want to say, things to her. I mean, I don't expect her to answer back. You know what I mean? I don't expect to have a full conversation with her about the weather or something. But I say, oh, you look nice today. Or maybe you're moving her around. You say, oh, let's be careful. Like you're doing with a real person. Let's be careful of that arm there or that leg. We don't want to damage that. You say stuff like that. But I don't think it's one of those where we're going to talk about the political things going on right now. Apparently, they just put some, I believe it's a black woman in the judicial office. And the news is making a big thing about it here. I mean, there's a special report. They've actually took all the television shows off just to show this opening speech as the first. But I mean, that's what's going on right now in America. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't cross over into that Norman Bates psycho territory.
Yeah.
Where he's almost in, what, mother? You want me to do what? And of course, it's just a corpse, so it's the same kind of deal. You know what I mean? I mean, as you say, oh yeah, let's just move your leg in case that gets damaged, and but any sort of little odd sentences and stuff like little loving things are all fine and stuff. But I certainly wouldn't have any sort of conversation with a doll in front of somebody else. I mean, it's similar to the idea of like not showing this in front of kids. This is for your private time, really, unless you've gone through that whole metamorphosis of going from sexy time into more companion type of doll. Because that tends to happen with a lot of doll owners. Because once you get all the sex out of your system, it's there if you want it, and that could happen. But you'll spend more time, as you say, dressing the doll, trying to give her a new look, new wig, new eyes, or something like that, or going, say, for a sporty look, something you haven't done before. All of these sorts of things seem to happen. And a lot of first-timers buying the doll, they're just in for the sexy time of an evening, and they don't get it. And I tell them, look, even if you just use your phone and start photographing the doll, you will do this. And they're no,
Yeah.
I won't. And they always come back after about 5-6 months and say, photographing the doll. She's got an Instagram account. It's all cool.
I'm seeing them pop up like mad. I'm like, my God, there's so many dolls on Instagram. And I won't check my doll's account for like months and find out that all these other dolls are following me. And I'm like, oh man, I need to start following these dolls. And they're just propping up. I'm like, my God, there's almost as many dolls on Instagram as there are these instant thoughts or whatever. Now, I couldn't believe how many there are on Instagram in general. But there's another thing I want to talk about. There's a comic book actually about doll. They tried to mix like a crazy guy in with the doll, but they did demonstrate to an extent what life is like with a doll. Unfortunately, the guy went too far and he was trying to feed her. And I was like, oh, I can't stand that. That's super cringe to me when somebody's like actually trying to put food in the doll's mouth. Let's not go that far. That's a little silly. That that to me was just like, oh, you don't even realize the bacteria, because the TPE, or I guess this was a silicone doll in the comic book, but basically, you don't want all that. You don't want food, and I just don't think food and dolls need to go together. Same thing with any kind of drinks. If people want to do that, I just think that's a terrible, terrible idea. Dolls should be kept pure for the most part. And I'm not saying with like, sexy time, that's a different story. But I'm talking about all the other stuff. You want to try to keep them clean. And even if you're going to do sexy time, you need to keep them clean. Know where your the hydrogen peroxide, stuff like that. Definitely not alcohol. Alcohol will really destroy a doll. I tried using I took my finger and I put it in some alcohol one time just to, get rid of a stain. Oh no, that will eat the TPE. So that's not a very good idea. But there's just a lot of things that people need to learn when they're getting dolls, especially the weight. Because if you are not, I'm not a stout, I'm not a big guy by any means. I'm like 145 to 150 pounds. And, I have to pick this thing up fireman's carry style, one arm over the legs, one arm holding the back. And that's pretty much how I do it. And I have to be careful because you can get yourself a hernia if you're not careful with these things. They're very heavy. So you got to have a good grip.
I had a guy come down to the Dollhouse specifically to just kind of get hands-on, because he thought before buying his first doll, I'd like to be able to feel the difference between TPE and silicone and see what the differences are and all that type of thing, which is all very good. And it's definitely the way to do it. But as he arrived, I said, for other reasons other than what you're thinking, what I do want you to do is actually lift one of these dolls. And I'd had conversation with him, and he'd done a lot of the research. He'd looked up a lot of things. He had a few questions which had obviously been led by some of the research which he'd made, and he seemed fairly well read and researched, so he'd done his homework. But so I just kind of picked up this idle TPE doll that I had. It's not particularly heavy. It's sort of like about 32 kilos, so it's not heavy as dolls go. And I just kind of like plonked it in his arms in the bridle carrying position, and he could carry it easily, but he was like, oh man, that is heavier than what I was expecting. And I said, yeah, but it's also a combination of the fact you can be holding the doll and it's still, you can feel the skeleton moving within the TPE and stuff like that, so it's not as easy as perhaps even grabbing a human being. And I said, yeah, I'm glad I did that. So apart from the fact everyone underestimates the weight, because I can bench press 200 pounds. You're not bench pressing a person, though, are you? That would be a lot easier. But trying to like gently carry something and then not bump into anything, and if there's anything slippy on the ground, you could do yourself an injury. So you've kind of got to have like a good center of balance and foothold and all the rest of it. It just makes it's difficult to do, much more difficult than you would at first think, because of course people think sex dolls, they think of those all horrific blow up things with the old face kind of idea. And there's even been a few of the plastic skeleton dolls which have been trialed over time. And these things you can kind of pick up with one arm and just hold it up. But they've never been like good for any sort of longevity or anything like that.
Oh no.
So, I mean, we've got weight reduction which is going on, and it's reducing weight by about 25% in terms of the TPE dolls. It's a significant amount, but it doesn't change it from heavy to light. It changes it from heavy to manageable. That's the difference. Because of course you get some of these thick dolls.
Well, I mean, if you're buying a Lizzo doll, But there's actually another thing I wanted to talk to you about also, because you were talking about the Vertimate and all that kind of stuff. And I have, like I said, I've been getting into the Western games that people are making, and they're making games with these programs. And these characters and renders are getting so realistic that I'm like, you can almost certainly make this a VR experience. Like, I'm blown away when I look at, there's a game called City of Broken Dreams. And it's basically a cyberpunk game that a guy's making from, I believe, Sweden. And I'm looking at the art and the graphics and how these characters move. And I'm like, wow, they're doing sexual scenes with this. They're doing regular moving animations. And these guys they're making bank. This guy makes $15,000 a month. I mean, yes, he's making real bank off this. And these games are great. I mean, I'm actually supporting some of these guys because they're making a visual novel type storyline, but the guy's like, I did 94 renders this time. I'm doing, and some of these will be like, oh, I've done 900 and something renders. And I'm just like, wow, that's impossible to even think about. That they're taking
to give some
programs.
Background on that, on Vertimate, as you mentioned. Yes, it is like kind of like a modeling software, but like you can create whole scenarios and stuff, and you can spin around, and it's really geared for putting on the virtual headset, so you can walk around this waifu, for lack of a better expression.
Right.
Now, the guy who I know, he got into the beta program when he could get it like a cut price, so he purchased his way in, and he's got like a good little side gig on making models for people. You'll be given certain specifications, and he bangs it all together. He can do sort of like 1 to 2 of these waifu models per day, and that only takes up like 2, maybe 3 hours of his time, and he can get on with the rest of his day. Sure. But this guy's got no 3D modeling experience. Mathematical capability is like near zil. So like when if you would say like, oh, does he actually understand the computational requirements behind whatever's required? No, he doesn't. He's a guy, he knows how to work out, he's just playing with all the sort of knobs and sliders, if you like, on the software. And even he was giving me little snapshots. He did a quick model of the Haley doll, which you may have seen on the Dollhouse. And it was really quite good. You could tell that it was CGI, but this was just kind of a quick knock-up. He said, here's another, it's a torso. It's just kind of focused on like kind of the navel up to just where the curve of the breast would be, and he kind of had the flesh rippling, as though like you're either sort of slightly moving or you're in strong wind or something like that, just to make the flesh move. It was breathtakingly real. Now, this is somebody with no prior experience. So if you were to get into this, and if you find that you've got a skill for modeling or anything like that, or you've got any background experience in this, you could probably do something that could only prior be done by Industrial Light and Magic, so 20 years ago.
Yes, that's what I was saying. I mean, I'm blown away. There's a game called, I've been playing it, called Being a Dick, and I cannot believe it's about being in college, and DIK is obviously Delta Iota Kappa, But they were, it's a funny little game. It's actually got some heart to it too. There's some serious, things like that. But just the renders that they've done, where they've actually got a scene where one of the girls wants you to lay on the bed with her and watch movies. And you actually look and like, oh my God, it's like I'm actually there on the bed next to her. Like they've actually got it positioned just right. And I'm like, you got to think about how much time and effort it takes to get that angling right. Because I've looked at, I'm no stranger to this kind of stuff. It takes a lot of work to really get every scene just right. And when I see how many scenes, how many different facial expressions, how many different movements, I'm just like, wow. I mean, the sex part has a little bit to be desired because they almost feel like GIFs. You know how a GIF just basically goes back and forth and back and forth, and there's really nothing major to it. So that's the sex part of it. But when you're looking at just the renders itself, you're like, man, that is pretty incredible. And that actually makes you feel some kind of way because maybe I remember when I was a girl that I was with that told me, "Hey, let's watch some movies together." And she, of course, pulled out her phone and was showing, her history, her background, like a lot of girlfriends have done to me. Oh, this is me when I was in elementary school. This is me when I was with my brother, like stuff like that. I was like, oh, that brings me back. So I mean, it's good to kind of have those experiences and play through those again because I mean, I'm nearing 40. I'm not going to be going to have the college experience of a 20 something or a late teen. That's not going to happen. But when I play these kinds of games, I can kind of go back a little bit. So there's a nostalgic feeling. And I think that's only going to continue into VR. I think VR is really the future of a lot of this stuff when we're talking about interactive experiences, because none of us are getting any younger, but we can kind of go back through these virtual worlds. And I mean, maybe there's a little bit of a fear there. There's actually a guy, Human, actually mentioned it. He said that he feels that people might get too used to the virtual world to where they would be like, oh, well, in this virtual world, I was jumping off buildings and, basically being Superman. So when they pull the headset off and they go to work, their brain may register them as being this guy that, jumps off buildings, and they may act very oddly. They may not act normal.
Well,
Act
these
like
are the
that.
same people that can quite happily play for 9 to 16 hours a day in computer games. And
Right.
then they have like a little bit of a break where they can't tell the difference between gaming and reality.
Yes. Yes, it's
Speaking of breaks-
scary. Because we're actually in that era where gaming, I mean, you and I both remember the old days of gaming. And I'm looking at it now and I'm like, I can't tell that this isn't reality. Like I can't tell anymore. I think it was even the Resident Evil 2 remake. I'm like, my God, how much more realistic are they going to make this? And there's a game called Lust, Lust for. They did Lust for Darkness, and they did another one. David Jaffe, formerly God of War, he actually worked on this new one, and I played it, and I was just sitting around looking at the mansion and just the decorations on everything because it was like walking around in a real house. I was like, I'm never gonna have a mansion myself, so let me experience this, and I was blown away. I was born in the '80s. So this is all just completely beyond me. I'm like, if it gets any further, I'm going to be frightened.
I mean, I like the idea that. Sorry, Tim.
Well, we got off the topic of dolls a little bit there. Now we're
Well,
in games.
I was going to bring it back a little because this idea of
Right.
virtual reality and stuff and Vertimet.
Mm-hmm.
That guy I was talking about before. I'm going to have to start like moaning at him to actually do a few more models for me. But the idea was that if somebody's like purchased like the whole sort of headset and stuff like that, to then be able to browse, walk amongst the dolls, kind of see what they look like from different angles, be able to just kind of put the different wigs, the different eyes on, so you can see the virtual representation of what the doll should look like. So rather than just having to rely on photo shoots, which, as we all know, They're all like in perfect light, great
Yes.
makeup, all the
Yes.
best angles and stuff like that. So you should just be able to like say strip the doll down and kind of look at it as though it's just a factory photo that you would get from the manufacturer. But you can then bend the doll over in a certain way if you want to kind of see where the love hole placement is. You get a lot of talk of that on the forums. Now, that is what I would like to see for the Dollhouse, but I think I just happen to be aligned with where the shopping experience is headed anyway, because I think a lot of retailers want to go completely online and then do stuff that way.
Yes, I mean when we talk about the metaverse and the shopping that they're trying to do, yes, doll. That's going to be the best way to do it. I mean, that is the future of going into a virtual world and looking at your product. I mean, they're even trying to make it. I wouldn't be surprised when they would have something that, like, I don't know if we're going to get to taste-o vision yet, but basically it's like, hey, you can taste the burger virtually before before actually buying it. So
I'd be so worried about like Russian hackers going in and making it taste like someone's shit.
oh my
Yeah.
God, that's what I was just saying.
No, because you like you would do it 1,000 times, right? And you get complacent. You're like, oh yeah, it'll be this 1,000th time, nothing will go wrong. And then the Russian hackers like, boop, and you're like, oh.
But I will honestly say that years ago, before I got into this world of Western gaming, I would have never expected that you would be able to do what you're talking about with a dollhouse. I was like, yeah, maybe in a couple of years. But now I'm looking at it and I'm like, of course you can do this now. You just put on that little headset and you can pick out the doll and play around with it. The only problem that we have, though, we still need something that has a texture. We need a feel. We need gloves, and I don't think gloves are really at that point yet. I was talking to a guy.
Well, I wouldn't have said so, but I mean, if we get this Neuralink thing, then it's more than possible. Then
well,
you don't need gloves.
They've actually got something that was FDA approved before Neuralink. And this is something that actually frightens me because they're going to run wires from the brain into the arms. But this was actually approved. I did some research on it. It got approved before Neuralink. And I'm not quite sure what the name of it was, but they're already got it where it's going to run nerve impulses through your arms and, of course, into the brain. And they're already prepared to do some testing, or if they haven't already done testing on it. I believe this comes from another country, though. This isn't an American product. It's not an Asian product either. I think it was something either developed either Norway, Sweden, something like that, a different company. But that might be the way we do it. Of course, I'm not sure how keen I am to getting a hole drilled in my head quite yet. I want to make sure they have everything worked out before I'm going to that level and spending all that kind of money. I mean, I'm supposed to have a surgery in a couple of months. Hopefully, I've got some issues going on, but I'm not really keen on surgeries. I don't like having them. The guy puts the anesthesia in there, and then you don't even know you're asleep. You're like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize anything happened. They're like, oh, it's all done.
And we put a microchip in your brain, too.
Yeah, we put a microchip in your brain. Oh,
honestly, I would love the idea to be able to interface at the binary level because the human brain is not binary. You can't recreate the things we see, feel, sense, right? Memories. It's not done on the binary, at least not yet. We haven't figured out a way to translate that. But if we ever do find a way, like the whatever interface it takes to take the human neural signals and turn them into binary signals, therefore you can interface them with computers, that will be interesting. Be like, hey, Phil, can I share my experience with the doll? And I literally send Phil my memory of banging the doll. And then he's like, thanks, I hate it.
Oh, that reminds me of that. That reminds me of that movie. I can't remember the name of it, but basically they could get experiences, and they would basically just...
It sounds like a Black Mirror episode.
Well, no, they would get experiences of sex, and they would basically put in the experience, and they'd already know what what it was like to having fucked this girl or whatever. It's actually I can't. It was a famous director that did it. Yeah, it was surprisingly a very popular movie, and that's basically what they did.
Oh, don't worry.
But
If it's like the story I was telling Phil earlier, I think everyone already knows that experience in my
well,
friend group.
well, yeah,
Like,
but
no, no,
basically what?
there was a Black Mirror episode where they had electronic storage in your brain, and it would record everything your eyes saw, and then you could like cast it onto a TV.
Okay, the
So it's
name
like
of the movie is
Chromecast, but
called. The name of the movie is called Strange Days.
I'll have to look at that
Yeah,
up. But anyways,
yeah,
the
definitely
ability to
check that out.
Chromecast what your eyes see is scary. First of all, it's
Mm-hmm.
scary. Um, but you could call someone a liar and they'd be like, no, rewind, and you like rewind your eyes, and it's like, oh, you just said that 5 minutes ago. And that's why that technology will never exist, Phil, is because it would make women look stupid. It's like, oh,
Oh
you said
yeah.
that 5 minutes ago. No, I didn't. Oh yeah, let's rewind the tape. Oh yeah, you said that 5 minutes ago.
Oh
But I
man,
didn't mean it
yeah,
that
that
way,
would be
Phil.
crazy. I still need to watch a lot of the Black Mirror. I've only seen like a
There's some
few
scary ones
episodes
in
from
there,
the
and it's
first
just like
season.
I can see that technology forming. And anyways, Phil, I have some questions
Ooh.
from people from our episode 1. So as I told you before we started recording, we had an overwhelmingly positive response to episode 1 of Filler Up. So Grim, I'll get you to plug your stuff. We'll hit some questions.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you can catch me at. Okay, let's see. Well, how am I going to do this? Because I've got first Migtown.tv/GrimLord's Games and Rants. I'm the only GrimLord on there. That shouldn't be hard to find. And also, you can find me at BitChute/GrimLord's Games and Rants. Be careful, there's a bunch of other GrimLords on there, but I'm the only one doing hentai and being a dick. Usually, if you find the being a dick videos, you'll find me. Also, we are trying to do a subscribe star. There should still be a subscribe star for GrimLord's Games and Rants if you want to support me, and a Patreon for Grim's Hentai Corner, which should still be going. I'm trying to get any kind of support. I think I'm going the locals. But basically, for those of you that don't know, we basically do hentai content. We basically do Western adult game content. We do political commentary. I have a guest host by the name of Dead Penetration. He comes in, and we'll actually be doing a show with him tonight. So if you guys hop into my Discord server, you can listen to that live. And you can also submit your articles. I'll read anything you guys post as long as it's not boring as all hell. Like some guy posted something about China, and I was like, dude, there's nothing relevant in this article at all. Why are you sending me this? It's like a waste of time.
China.
Oh, yeah. But it's been great hanging out with you guys. Phil, Tim, I'll see you guys later. I got a bunch of stuff to do. Have a good one. And I am out of here.
All right, just you and me. So, well, I mean, it's Phil. Everyone came here to see Phil. Let's not lie about this. But of course, yeah. So Phil's flying solo. So let us know in the comments what you thought about today's episode of Filler Up. Do you want Drex back? Did you like seeing Phil flying solo? Do you want to tell Phil to fuck off? do you want to tell him that you'd slob his knob any day of the week? I mean, look, it's,
That's a given.
everything on the spectrum and everything in between. All right, couple of viewer questions. Phil, Sam M asks in the comments, how is face posting with dolls? Can you move the eyes and make expressions and stuff, or is the doll's face just stuck the way it is?
Largely speaking, the doll's facial expression is as it is, but pretty much all of the dolls, minus Grimm's sort of excuse for a doll head, where you couldn't move the eyes. Pretty much every doll head I've ever had, you can move the eyes. But like say, like the eyebrow expression here, that's kind of static. There isn't much you can do with that. There are newer heads which are coming out from certain brands where you can kind of open and close the mouth a little bit, but there isn't much in the way of creating smiles. Now, you see a lot of smiles and stuff on Instagram, but that's all face app that's doing that.
But you can cross the eyes and make your very own Belle Delphine.
Yep, yes you can. And I sold one of those.
Belle Dolphine.
Yeah.
Let's see. The other question. Oh yeah, is more of a comment than a question. But Joshua says if Phil did a how it's made sort of thing, plenty of people, us being men, would definitely be fascinated to see the process. I'm personally interested in the mechanical workings inside the frame skeletons, since I'm thinking there must be a way to replace some of the heavier metal components with composite parts to reduce weight. If it's possible to shave down the heft, I'm positive people would enjoy that.
Well, I mean, I was rather hoping to have a video for this session, but we've just had a week's worth of lockdown in China. You might have heard that a lot of the factories have been locked down. There was a bit of a spike in COVID, so people weren't around. But my contact at Fire Dolls, who used to be my main contact at the Jinsan factory until he went independent, has agreed to do a working factory video for us, so we'll have something to show how the inner mechanics and how things are built, how they're all put together, how everything's smoothed and finished. So stay tuned for that one then.
Awesome. Odal 190 says, I got one after being inspired by Phil after the 1 year anniversary stream. I have a bit more of a mixed opinion on it, though. I'm 34 and didn't have much of a honeymoon phase. And yes, the heating rod makes a huge difference. Wish I'd known that off the bat.
Yeah. If you just go in straight cold with lube, then it can be a bit sort of necrophilic.
Maybe you're into that.
Some people do prefer that. Not my cup of tea, I have to say.
There is definitely more of a market for tits, though, as it's hard to find anything double D cup or lower while having any kind of thickness. I like tits of all sizes, big or small, but that ass has to be there. Downside is if you get a doll with a lot of ass, you're looking at 8+ pounds. And if I get another, it's going to be a custom and probably too heavy to ever move. He also has a recommendation.
Oh, go on then. Oh, I was going to say there is a one by YL Dolls, which is like super heavy. I think that's over 130 pounds, but it's all just hips and ass.
TFM did that one African Love Doll toy review that had ridiculous proportions. We're talking like Nicki Minaj level of proportions, and he put Celestina's head on top of it. It was a torso. It's a torso toy. And then he put Celestina's head on top of it, and he broke out into a fit of laughter for about 10 minutes because it just looks so ridiculous. But and then Otto finishes off with also when manufacturers send you pics before they ship out, make sure you ask for pictures of the bottom of the feet. Phil, it's always the feet people. Always the feet people. He says, when I got mine, the bottom of the feet were completely wrecked, and I looked back at the factory pics, and specifically, they never sent me that angle. He says, I'm happy to talk about my experience, though, if you ever need someone to talk about it. Sure, hit us up. Email me, tim@migtown.show. Tim at Migtown, MIGTOWN.show. And we can get you set up with one of the episodes of Filler Up.
And if anyone actually orders a doll and it does arrive like that, even if you didn't get bottom of the soles of the feet factory picked, it's still like 95% likely that's transit damage. So you let me know, and then we can get the replacement sorted for you.
Phil takes care of his customers in more ways than one, I guess. I mean, what's it like, Phil, to sell happiness to people?
Well, when I started out, this was just kind of a means to an end. I saw a business opportunity. The fact that it happened to be very MGTOW-esque was just a bonus, I suppose. But it wasn't until people started to come back, like 1 in, say, 20 customers come back and just say, Phil, you've really changed my life. This has made me so happy. And it's so easily happy. You can just get the $1 and just be happy. I mean, there are people who get more than one, but it's generally more than enough. And that's when I realized there was so much more job satisfaction to be had out of this position than, just sell something to like make a buck. The only other thing I can think that would liken to would be to sell high-end cars, because men get very emotional over their cars as well.
Yeah, and that process is very similar to what you would do, right? Because like if you go to a Honda, right, they'll just be like, "Oh, here's a car, test drive it, buy it, cool, done." If you go to like the Maserati dealership here in Calgary, they'll sit you down and like, "Okay, tell me what kind of car you'd like to have." Right? And you're like, "Oh, I want a car that does this, and I like my seat to do this, and I want it to look like this thing." Right? It's an interview, and he's like, "Okay, let's go take a look at the. He'll turn the computer screen around and be like, "Okay, let's design you a car," and they'll design you this custom Maserati, $180,000, but it's yours, right? No one else. You're not gonna meet someone else on the road who has the same custom Maserati as you do.
Yeah, I've done this with potential doll owners, as I'll call them, because they haven't bought at this point, and 99 out of 100 types of doll owners, they're all about the appearance, so they can just kind of look at the photos and go like, that's kind of the one that I want. But this guy, he didn't seem to be so taken with or so bothered by what the appearance was like, and I managed to get it out of him. He wanted more of a sexual experience, so rather than just a standard doll, I got him the SE doll robot, which kind of bucks back, so he was actually getting some physical feedback from the sexy time.
Different. There's quite a few comments on here making reference to the fact that Goblin Amputee was the most normal fetish described in episode 1.
I'm still waiting for Cooper to actually get into like a little bit of a cosplay thing, whether I don't know if you would call that a fetish, because when he was trying to show me the kind of thing that he wanted, he would get like these little CGI animations and show me the kind of thing. And there was always some kind of like sort of sexy outfit, not just traditional woman sexy outfit, something that worked for a goblin. So I think it's just a matter of time before he starts buying outfits.
Yeah, he's gonna start dressing her up. I hope he brings her to Matsuri.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And he dresses up as Goblin Slayer. Yeah, Koopa, the Christopher Columbus of degeneracy, sailing beyond where no man shall. I assume he meant shall go. Dre Rule says, I want to have this conversation with Phil. I want the biggest doll titties you have. No, that's not big enough.
Okay.
How big is big?
Well, I mean, I think there was a mispronunciation or a confusion in the English when they translated this, when they released this doll, because they were calling it a K cup, but I think it's an X cup because the breasts literally come out that far from the doll.
Does that just not rip off at the moment you try to move it?
You couldn't have those as gel breasts or solid TPE, otherwise you do risk them tearing.
So there's like frame. Hollow. There's frame in the breast, and then I guess.
Well, there's like an air pocket on the inside.
Oh, so it's squishable too. You can just like.
Now, of course, since they did that one, there's some other ones. They're always very large-breasted because they have to be. But these are the ones which they'll call what they term as the open nipple variety. So you can either just get yourself stuck inside the nipple and it goes right in, or you can push liquid in there and then you can start milking those things.
You get a shot of whiskey, or you were describing those to our friend Mr. Richard Masterson.
Yes, that's right.
He loved that idea. You get Gatorade in one for when the cuck isn't around, and then
I just think of a good Scotch or a bourbon or something like that, and you're dealing with like a good liquor and mummy issues all at the same time.
Now, what would be the Scotch of choice for inside a breast?
Well, for Scotch, I only ever go one way. I go for the nice mild Speyside whiskey. My favourite being Annoch. I'll have to bring you a bottle sometime.
You'll have to. I don't think I've got a really good whiskey store right beside me, and I haven't been able to find it. Of course, I will drink any Scotch. Any Scotch. I'll try any Scotch once.
Well, do you
There's a few
try
I
like
collect.
the Lafroigs of the world, the very because they're the ones that smell like burning tires. That's a peaty whiskey. This is
Oh,
not.
well, so Nick's obviously Nick's favorite Lagavulin, right? He got me
Yeah,
hooked
that's
on
a
that.
peaty one. Yeah.
Yep, yep. And I didn't know this before, but apparently that's how they arrange them in stores. It's like, okay, smoke is all the way down here, and smooth is all the way up here.
Hmm.
I didn't know that because I was looking at the arrangement, and I'm like, wait, this isn't alphabetical. And then the cashier is like, oh no, they're so this is all the peaty whiskeys, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense because it's the Oceanair, there's Belmore. Um, but then as you come across, like Highland Park was way over on the other side.
Hmm.
I've got a really good bottle of 15-year Highland Park. That thing is buttery smooth. Honey, touch
Nice.
of honey in it.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I like the honey whiskey liqueurs as well, like Drambuie and Glevart. They're very nice, but you have to have a sweet tooth to enjoy them.
yeah. Well, I mean, my go-to drink is the rum and Coke. I think I've got a sweet tooth. I think I got that covered. Um, but Big Titty, Biggest Titty says, I want to know if Phil can make cat girls. I would be so down.
I just sold one this last few weeks. It's made by Elsa Babe, and it's going for the furry look, but without any actual fur as such. So it's all silicon and stuff, wonderfully soft silicon as well, which I'm really quite impressed with. So then next on my list to actually list on the Dollhouse is the Elsa Babes.
But you can also get you can go get a fur coat from a store and drape that over her, and then have that.
Or
Have
just
the
get like
fur.
or kind of get like I don't know what they're not latex.
I guess
The
felt.
spandex like furry outfit, which will go be like skin.
Dress her up like a furry,
But, yeah,
a cat furry doll.
but it's got all the right shapes. So I mean, if you really had the time, you could implant the fur yourself. It would just take you months to do.
Minotaurus Rex asks, I feel compelled to ask Phil if he can make an orc female from Raid Shadow Legends.
So an orc female. So it's going to look very muscular, but it's going to have the female secondary sexual characteristics. It's just the head, which is going to be very different. We could do it. We would have to design a new head. It would have to be an orc head, but that can be done.
Tusks. Orcs typically have tusks
Yeah.
for teeth. So I don't know. Some people have them point down. Some people have them point up. I don't know which one you'd be into, but that would be something to grab onto while you're going to town.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the use for pigtails, right?
Absolutely. That's what they were designed to do.
Well,
Hair well.
now, Phil, how tightly does the hair on the top of the head hang on to the head of the doll? Like, could you really, pull on that and not worry about it?
If it's a wig, you're probably going to have to use some sort of PVA glue to hold it in place. But you can get implanted hair, which you can literally kind of pull quite hard. But you do risk ripping it out if you go too hard. That's the only problem.
So know your limit and operate within it.
Yeah.
And do not try that at home with your girlfriend. Joel Reese says, gotta love the look on Phil's face, sense of pride and accomplishment.
What can I
Not
say?
gonna lie, short stack seems easy to store. Between buying a new PC at the end of the year or looking up dolls, the doll has a slight edge. Yeah,
I'd like
I
dolls
said,
to be as upgradable as computers, actually, at one point. That would be cool.
Yeah. This question's come up a couple of times. Payment plans for dolls.
I do get asked this a bit because there are finance companies out there who I can approach and they will handle the finance. So essentially what would happen is you'll do like a one-page form, which is to see if you've got the credit history and stuff or credit rating to get finance. And if so, they will pay me so that the purchase goes through and then you are just at the behest of the finance company.
The repossession on that would be a nightmare.
Now, the thing is, if you can afford it, it's great. But then if you can afford that very easily, you can probably just save up over a couple of months and have that that money anyway. I do prefer the idea of somebody having saved up first, because if then it's still not quite what you're after, you're not left with a product that you don't particularly want or want to sell on, and you haven't finished paying for it yet. I don't like the idea of somebody perhaps getting into financial straits over dolls. But that's just a personal preference of mine. I mean, if there's enough people come to, we really, really do want finance, I can organise it. But I would like to have at least something like a 40% deposit on something like that, just so a lot of the payment is already made.
And I think for many people too, they're just fine with sending you a little bit of money, and then once it's all paid up, then you place the order.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I've done that for a number of people, so that's cool.
So those are your options. What would happen if you default on that payment and the bank hires a repo company and it's like, yeah, you got to go pick up a sex doll. Like you see those shows on TV every now and then, right? The Repo Men or whatever, and they got these people in the hood just like, you motherfucker, you ain't taking my car. It's always a German Shepherd. Shout out to Drex.
I mean, not that TFM would ever be in that position, because he believes like me, just save up and pay for it and then it's done. But if anybody came for Celestina, it would be out of his cold, dead hands.
I bet. No, but imagine being the repo guy, though, too. It's like, I don't want to touch this.
Yeah, he puts a hazmat suit on or something like that to tell you.
And because you know that when the person's like, oh, okay, the bank sent me the notice that it's getting repoed, I'm not going to clean it. You know the person's not going to give it to you in the best of condition.
Do you ever get in North America, they go to repo, will they take other possessions of yours? If say, like a car, if you didn't have the car anymore but you still owed the payments on it, would they take other possessions of yours? Because I would imagine they'd rather do that than take a second-hand doll.
Yeah, not the repo men themselves. I think like these are all American shows that I see, right? So I don't know the laws in the states. It varies state to state. I think repo men are only legal in some states and not in every state, just like bounty hunters, right? Nowadays, bounty hunters are just people who skip their bond, right? You're not going around with a Colt single action army and putting people down and dropping the body off in front of the sheriff's office. Nowadays, bounty hunting is just how good are you at talking to underground people. Right, the cops don't have time to track down someone who skipped a warrant for like a missed child support payment. Cops have better things to do. But so the court will just the bounty hunters will go to the court and say, "Yeah, I'll take this on." I'll and then I get the bond as the payment. So, and then they'll conduct a citizen's arrest, and that is the key part of the law that you need to be a bounty hunter. In a state that doesn't have a good citizen's arrest provision, I don't think you can be a bounty hunter. But there are some states like Texas, Nevada, where you can roll up on someone's house and be like, "Yeah, the cops have a warrant for your arrest. I'm arresting you."
Okay.
So, or no, not the cops. You have a bench warrant from a judge. You have a bench warrant from the judge, and I am arresting you. A citizen's arrest, and then you drive that guy down to the courthouse. He gets booked and whatever else. But I'd imagine the repo men can't be like, "Oh, the car's not here, so we're going to take your truck instead." I think you would have to go to court for something like that.
Because we'll get this in the UK when people don't pay the equivalent of their property taxes. Then the bailiffs can turn up and they'll just start taking furniture and TVs and stuff like that away to the tune of whatever is owed.
Or if you don't pay your BBC license fee.
Oh, see now those people, it's crazy. People talk themselves into letting go that they've actually been watching illegal TV. When they can turn up at your house, but they have no jurisdiction to actually force their way in. They don't have any sort of search warrant or anything like that. So you just close the door in their face.
Yep. No, I watched Netflix. Done. Or say nothing. No, fuck off. Done. Close the door.
Yep, that's yep, and you're within your rights
Or
to do
sod
that.
off
Okay.
if you want to be English about it. Sod off. Close the door.
Yes, we didn't
Okay.
like your sort around here.
Yeah. Okay, you got to do some English lexicon for me. Okay, so what's the difference between telling someone to sod off or fuck off? What context would I use each one in?
Sod off is like more of a colloquialism. Fuck off would be to be vulgar.
Yeah. All right, so you say fuck off to the government and sod off to your friends.
I'm more likely to say fuck off to my friends because I like being vulgar to those friends. But yes, you are correct.
Okay. I think that's it for the questions. We can wrap this up. I'll trim it down just a little bit. But Phil, as always, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this
pleasure.
was the Apache attack helicopters of all kinds. Female swimmers with male genitals who are stunning and brave. Remember, this is for you. We did this for you. This has been episode 2 of Fill Her Up. Let us know in the comments. You love it? Hate it? Want more? Till next time, everyone. Stay frosty.